Happy Thursday and welcome to today's very special Super Tech Bites episode. I am Rick Vanover, the Rickatron. We're going to talk about hypervisor migration and some of the realities with that. We are live. It is noon New York time here in the U.S. East Coast, and I've got two very special guests here joining me. First up, Benjamin Clements. Why don't you do a moment, introduce yourself and your really cool practice that you do?
Okay, Benjamin Clements, President of Strategic Online Systems, also known as SOS. And, we've been in this business of like helping people migrate from one virtual platform to another. Of course, we do things like management of devices, laptops, and do data center, as well as some AI at the edge.
That's fantastic, Benjamin. In fact, you and I met at Veeam this year, right after one of the demos we did on the general session. We're going to do a longer form version of that today, sneak peek to the agenda, good stuff. And then, really, I like to say partnerships really make technology stacks work. And you are really doing a great job of partnership with DataOn, and Howard Lowe has joined us as well. Howard, why don't you give us an introduction as well?
Thanks, Rick. Hello, everybody. This is Howard Lowe. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at DataOn. Really happy to be here today. Coming to you guys live from the lounge here in Tampa, Florida. Beautiful Florida. DataOn is a hybrid cloud computing company focused exclusively on Microsoft Azure Stack ACI. And hopefully today we can share some of our experience with you guys, working with partners like Veeam and working with our partner Benjamin to help our customer to have choices in your solution.
Yeah, fantastic. That is the reason of the season. So we've got Howard in Florida. We've got Benjamin in Tennessee. Myself, I'm in Ohio, as well as Jeffrey, our producer, is in Ohio. And then Felicia is in Texas. So let us know where you're tuning in from. We are live on three social media platforms today. We are live on Facebook. We're live on LinkedIn. And we are live on YouTube. I'm watching the LinkedIn stream. Felicia's watching them all. But drop in your questions about some of these migration topics. These are the experts. That's why we're doing this episode. And we will get these fielded for you. But let's take a look quickly at the share here, the slides. Let's pull that up. I want to talk about data freedom. That is one of the primitives of what we have here at Veeam. And that is something that's been in our conversations nearly every day. And if I were to kind of break this down another way, data freedom is something, first of all, it's not new. It allows us to move our data to different workloads. So this is technology Veeam has had in the market since 2016 with our direct restore to Azure. So take an image-based backup from the agent or from the virtual platforms that can be restored into Azure. We have since made basically a full bidirectional mesh of to and from that you can do. And so that's the reason. And there's been some specific market considerations that I really want to leverage both Benjamin and Howard's perspective here. So let's start with you, Benjamin. If we were to look at some observations in the market, sounds like people are wanting to move different platforms. Every time I have a conversation with a customer that's running a lot of VMware, for example, they're asking me, and also partners like you and some others, asking Veeam, how can we move to a different platform? I take it, well, first of all, I know you've built a business around it, but I take it comes up a lot in your conversations.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is that people are starting to feel trapped because they're like, okay, I just got a renewal that is 3 to 5 times more than what I'm used to. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to respond. I don't know where to go. Don't even know, is there another platform out there that we can move to in a way that's non-disruptive to our business or that's even supported at an enterprise level? And so, we just want to get on here. We're excited about this because we want to share some hope. You have hope. You have alternatives. You aren't alone. Previous organizations have made this journey.
That's super encouraging, and it's also an absolute reality. I want to highlight that I see very different camps. I see organizations that are staying the course on their VMware investment. I see organizations that were already multi-hypervisor, and they're going to rebalance based on the economics that they are given to them. I've also talked to organizations that are considering, wholesale evacuation, right? And so that is pretty scary. And then one of the big questions that comes up is, okay, tell me about this new platform. Now, Howard, I know that you work a lot in delivering one of the, honestly, really attractive. I know you and I have a lot of common partners, common friends in the industry that are delivering Azure Stack HCI solutions. But what are you seeing in the market? What's kind of the solution that you see when organizations want to move into Azure Stack HCI?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. And I think it's important to know that this is a journey. And I think Benjamin put it very articulately. It's you have a choice. Clearly, Veeam is a great, awesome partner of yours today for technology, but it doesn't mean that you only have one choice of VMware. You have alternatives in the marketplace. And the alternative to us is Microsoft. Microsoft's been around for a long time, as all of you know. And DataOn has built our business around Microsoft and their virtualization platform, which Azure Virtualization, or AKA Hyper-V, right? And it's been built to be enterprise ready, robust, and resilient. And thanks to Benjamin and his team, we have helped many customers, enterprise customer, move from a VMware environment to an Azure Stack HCI Hyper-V environment using Veeam, actually. So it says a lot, the fact that not only do you have the choice and freedom of move your data from a one hypervisor, VMware, to Microsoft, but Veeam is that company that actually help you do that. And we've been doing successful for the last 10 years since we've been doing this job.
That's fantastic, Howard and Benjamin. I think these perspectives truly are important and the ones that matter. So a couple of comments have coming in from people watching. So again, let us know where you're from on the chat. We're going to build the map. We'll come to that in a little bit. But I want to actually kind of put it in technical terms. This is the Tech Bytes stream. We want to do stuff, and what we're going to do here, we're going to do kind of a longer form demo, and I'm going to actually do some of this stuff and have Benjamin, who's a practitioner in this, kind of walk me through what he does every day. So, Benjamin, when you and I guess, first met, I took some object storage backups here. I have this one called Data Freedom, and I've got 10 different systems here. Now, by the way, Benjamin, 10 at a time, is that a reasonable amount? Do you do more? Do you do one at a time? When you're going to migrate someone, how do you size it? Let's start with that conversation.
Well, there's so many different aspects of, if you're going from your existing virtualization platform, going to like Azure Stack HCI. Azure Stack HCI has so much IOPS, and it blows people away once they get it on premises to see how performant it is, that we have often seen that we've overrun not the Azure Stack HCI, but their existing platform, either their existing SAN, their existing whatever. Now, that is when you're getting the initial backup ready to, do your migration or your test migration. So what we always recommend is that if we had something like this, we would do, start with like 4, do an instant VM recovery, or now it's called instant recovery, of course, and do a migration, take it off the network, what y'all would call a sandbox, what our customers like to hear us call it as the bubble, basically so that we can do these test migrations to make sure that they don't see problems of, because all the time you'll find somebody goes, oh, everything's being redirected through this top of rack switch. We didn't realize it. And we find all these bottlenecks. And so therefore, we see it varies quite a bit, depending also on what is their performance that they need to have right when they do instant VM recovery. Are they going to have people logging into it as soon as possible? So therefore, it could go from 4 to 10, for instance.
So I'm going to take 10 just because I know it works.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm going to highlight is like right here today, you'll see these are backups under management by Veeam. And I did an instant recovery task 2. Now in Veeam, we call it Microsoft Hyper-V, but the target can be an Azure Stack HCI cluster. I'm going to take all 10 at once. I did a backup this morning, so I have recent restore points. And by the way, one of the things I know that Benjamin likes to do is make a separate backup. We're going to come back to that, Benjamin, because I know that's a really cool trick that you have. I'm going to, and by the way, Control A can be your friend, just like other things in Windows. And I'm going to find my more capable Azure Stack HCI host. I do not have a cluster in this environment. It is a standalone physical bare metal host. So I have one that I'm going to put everything on. And if anybody's ever done instant recovery within the same hypervisor, this is very, very similar within the same hypervisor type. It's very, very similar. So it should be very familiar. And I'm not going to change any of these pathings because I want all of my Hyper-V storage to go on this V for Veeam drive. That's funny. I like doing that. And then, you know, I'm going to put everything on the lab VM's network. But Benjamin, this is an easy one. I'm sure networking, you mentioned top of rack, but I'm sure that's a learning journey. And also Howard, you know, when it comes to the networking for Azure Stack, any of you have any kind of feedback on what people learn with networking when they move to this type of solution?
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, you know, anything from, you know, they may have had jumbo packets at one spot and didn't have it all the way through of all their switches to, you know, Azure Stack HCI uses RDMA for the sake of very low latency to, you know, there's just a lot of different pieces. They may have had some packet filtering that they didn't realize that they had. They didn't have certain connections. We've run through a lot of different, you know, challenges, but it's a good discovery. You'd rather find this out by doing a test rather than once a disaster happens, you know, reactionary versus being proactive.
I think it's also important to note that for the world that we live in of Azure Stack HCI, networking is the foundation for the success of the entire infrastructure. Like many storage area network. In terms of Microsoft, you know, everything is run on traditional Ethernet TCP with SMB3 package. One of the uniqueness why Benjamin mentioned earlier about the performance, the awesomeness of the throughput is Microsoft employed a technology where it's required for Rocky V2, where you have the ability to offload the processing of the network to the card instead of using the CPU. That allows you to have an infrastructure that's high performing and low latency, right, from that perspective. But when we go to customer, we always say, hey, we really got to understand your network to make sure that when we do the migration is optimized, at the same time, making sure the environment we build for you is optimal for your usage. You know, today we're looking at minimum 10 gig, 25, and now 100, 200 gig really happening. So you'll see that really a evolution of network and really allowing the customer to have high performance and really great experience.
And super good feedback there, both of you. I'm going to go ahead and launch the instant recovery. All 10 of these are going to fire up at the same time. And we will see the 10 of them pop in here. But I just got word from the producers that the map is ready. We have several people chiming in from Tennessee. I don't know what you have done, Benjamin, but we have a lot of folks joining from Tennessee. So let's take a look at the U.S. We've got California, Nebraska, Georgia, Wisconsin, and many in Tennessee. So, and then I think that's Massachusetts as well. That has been illuminated. And let's go over to Europe. We have both Germany and Romania in the house. I think I know who the one is from Romania. So welcome, everyone. Again, if you're just joining us, we might go back to the map here in a bit to see where everyone is tuning in from. This is also very fun. Live on 3 streams, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And in just that time, these 10 virtual machines are being enumerated and powered on. And while this is happening, I want to get some of your kind of your additional perspective here, Benjamin. We're going to let the migration go. We're going to come back to it. But, you know, the migration is the disaster that you plan for, is what Jason Buffington likes to say. But I think this mobility conversation fits really good with some of your points here.
Yeah. And so, I think that's one example of data freedom is VM mobility. So it is your VM. So you need to be able to run your VM on the platform that you choose. And Veeam gives us that flexibility because if you think about it, we're planning for all these disasters. Well, the disasters shown here, acts of God, system failure, et cetera, the ones that are out of our control. But a disaster that a lot of people don't think about is what they're thinking about right now, which is budget. A lot of you are watching this because you got the renewal back from VMware. That's actually a disaster. If you cannot keep going with that and you have to make a knee-jerk reaction to another virtualization environment, or you have to shut everything down for days at a time, that is a disaster. You caused it because of some external issues. So therefore, we want to think in terms of migration is this planned disaster recovery that we control the timing and we control to minimize the downtime of those VMs. And then we can work on those risks of budget, potential support, stability, expandability of those platforms.
That is beautiful. Financial situation could be a disaster out of your control. Let me give you another example, Benjamin, that is not, this market example we're highlighting. I've talked to some organizations that, especially in, I don't like the word third world, but in organizations around the world that maybe are sometimes challenged, they know they're going to have a budget shortfall. They know they're going to have these economic shutdowns and things like that. That could be a different type of a disaster. So that is super important. But I think that when we look at these migrations, the risk, the testing, the performance, the integrity, these are all important and really good ideas. I mean, I'd like to say Veeam makes it easy, but I think your experience in the space in particular, Benjamin, makes the organizations feel a lot more comfortable about it.
Yeah.
I think I want to add something that Benjamin you alluded earlier. The ability to have a technology that delivers not only a peace of mind for your backup in multiple environment, virtualized environment, but having the ability to create DR that's affordable. If you're in a VMware environment with the SAN, doing a DR is not that affordable. It costs a lot of money. In the real world, which I live in, where my job is to talk to customer, we have at least now 5, 10 plus enterprise customer using Veeam to do their DR on multiple sites, ability to do DR across locations. And Benjamin has been successfully implemented that solution using Veeam as a foundational architecture to deliver that within budget and affordable. So I want to add that fact that not only ability to have the solution, but able to deliver it at a really a budgetary price for the customer is important. And Veeam has delivered that solution for many of our customers today.
Yeah, I still sometimes get times people saying Veeam's too expensive, but love that, Howard. Benjamin, if we look at some of these, is there any of these that really gets an organization, catches them by surprise, maybe?
Well, catching them by surprise, maybe that. Well, I guess, can I go through some of these? Because
please
what
do.
I want to do
you have
is
the
explain.
Expertise, for sure. Please
Yeah.
do.
So the additional risk. So if you think about what we're doing, using Veeam and the migration tool to go to a less risky platform to mitigate a certain risk. Well, a lot of times we'll expect this migration to go in a certain amount of time. And so therefore we'll say, let's say we're using a different backup vendor. Let's just go ahead and dump that backup vendor. And because we know we're going to be migrating over very soon. Well, they just introduced a gap of risk and they weren't thinking about it because they assumed the migration of all the VMs will happen at a certain time, where when you actually get into it, you might have to readjust which VMs am I migrating at which times. Even if we have 2 copies of the VM, one with the old backup, one with now your Veeam, or even, you used to be backing up at a certain level, the VM on the old and now on Azure Stack HCI. we want to have overlap, at least during the migration time. We don't want to increase risk during this process of reducing risk. And that's what some people don't think about. The other way they may increase risk is they'll say, okay, I'm on VMware, so I want to go ahead and take off the tools because I'm going to be installing integration services over here. So they'll uninstall the VMware tools too soon, which makes it very difficult to go back. And what we want to do during this time is mitigate those risks and allow us to go back temporarily. Because during this time of migration, think in terms of hybrid. Think in terms of we are in a hybrid state, and we want to have the flexibility to go briefly back for that VM and maybe use a different VM to get over. So that's one that people don't think about, is they can accidentally increase risk. The second thing is how valuable it is for Veeam's instant recovery to be able to test these migrations. So we need to test how the migration of each OS, the VM OS, how each will work. And we'll do that by sending them into a sandbox, or like what we call the bubble, but it's just basically a network that's not on production. So we want to see any issues that will happen. For instance, and I know that some of our listeners still have 2012 R2 out there. We know it because we hear about it, and everybody kind of does this thing when they talk about it, but it's a reality. And migrating over a Windows Server 2012 that's 32-bit versus a 2012 R2 that's 64-bit, they're very different OSs. You are going to have different challenges. And also think about this, when you're migrating, it's almost like these are two different servers. So their NICs are very different. You might have NIC conflicts when you migrate something over. And of course, that's not something that Veeam can do anything about. It's because you're going from one platform to another. But you need to be able to test that out in advance so that you know what problems you're going to run into and you can mitigate that. Because remember, that's the reason on my first slide I showed a failover and a migration are planned disaster recoveries. You want to put all the work in before you do the migration. Now, I don't want to talk the whole time here. I haven't even gotten down to the last three. Any of these that you want me to jump past?
Not yet, but I do want to jump back to the demo real
Absolutely.
quick. And I just want to show that all 10 of these are back up and running. And when we look at Veeam here, you want to see that these are mounted, right? So this could be a time, I'm not doing the bubble as you were saying,
Yeah.
but this could be a time that I could go maybe doing up a reboot, uninstall tools or something like that. I could do some assessment on each of these workloads to know that they're ready to go. I want to keep going with those risk points or those factors, Benjamin, because they're super important. But from the Veeam side, one thing that I always have to tell people to do, a lot of people think once we've done instant recovery and it's running here on Hyper-V, Azure Stack HCI, we have to migrate it to production. And I'm going to close the loop. I'm going to do it right here. So migrating to production takes the actual, what used to be a VMDK, and fully populates these special VHDXs that we have in place here. This absolutely closes the loop. This does take a little bit of time, but these are 10 systems. I think 4 of them are Linux and the rest are Windows. And they're honestly base systems, but I did want to kick that off before we go too far, because I want to close the loop here on this show. So we're doing that migration to production. But before we go too far, Howard, I want to hear the rest of your points, Benjamin. But Howard, anything stick out so far to you?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment, and this is important. The ability to have a technology that does all the capability like Veeam is very, very important. The ability for someone to know how to use it and mitigate risk to make sure the customer feel comfortable is another discussion. Where these 5 points what Benjamin have gone through or will go through is very, very important, because you as a customer or a partner has to realize you have to communicate closely with your customer to understand the process it takes to mitigate risk, to make sure the migration happen with minimum downtime and no disruption to their data and production workload. By doing this, all the feedback we have from our customer, where we work with Benjamin and Benjamin work with them, has been super positive. Why? Because it's meticulous, because they're using technology and knowing when to use it and how to use it and make sure it's successful for the customer. I think it's important to know technology is there, but knowing how to do it and make sure that you make the customer feel comfortable is super important.
I'll say that another way, Howard.
Yeah.
Partnerships are in Veeam's DNA, and I absolutely value the experience that Benjamin and you have worked together on in the field to take the risk out, give that optimistic view. The experience matters, and that's something that Veeam doesn't have. I have a great analogy to explain it. Actually, it's your analogy, Benjamin, but no, this is right up our alley. So. Benjamin, we're doing let's check on them. We're moving good, but we're not done. But let's keep going on some of those different advice points that you have.
Okay, great. So if we're going to performance of the current environment, because we deal with DataOn and use Microsoft's Azure Stack HCI, it's a blazing fast, like I said. And what we've seen is that with very large VMs, that it'll start to, even if we put a temporary repository on the Azure Stack HCI, we have seen it overrun the existing infrastructure of the customer. And all of a sudden, everything's slowed to a crawl. And so you have to take into account of all those bottlenecks. And a bottleneck is not a negative thing, honestly. A bottleneck is the least common denominator. And we just need to identify where those are so that we can increase those. So, we had to actually get that customer to throttle back their Veeam backups. We had to get them to throttle back how many VMs they're restoring at one time, because they were just overrunning both their old SAN and then they were overrunning their switches. So we had to help them identify, okay, now let's, add bandwidth to this particular connection, for instance. If Azure Stack HCI was slow, we may not have that problem, but it's blazing fast. So you have to think about the performance of your current environment. Data integrity, it sounds obvious, and this is one of those that are obvious things, but it happens way too often. We've seen way too often that somebody accidentally started the same VM on the new Azure Stack HCI environment that was currently running on their VMware environment. And quite frankly, the reason is simple. We're used to having a single pane of glass to see all of our VMs. Well, during that migration, you're using two panes of glass. You're using one to see all the Microsoft VMs, and you're one seeing all the VMware VMs. And so it's not totally obvious. They'll bring up, or they'll leave up the old one, or didn't realize it didn't shut down fully, that it was kind of stuck or something, and that it's still being taken up, and they try to bring up the new VM, and it causes problems, of course. Now, before I get into my big one, my most important one of minimizing downtime, because this is where Veeam's tools, why we've been using Veeam only to do these migrations. I want to pause there and see if there's anything y'all want to add on what I just mentioned.
One comment on my side, the data integrity. Yeah, I could see that as being something that's error prone on your own, meaning you left it running, and keep in mind the MAC address stays the same on the new one, right? That's a lot of times people don't realize by default the MAC address stays the same. So there could be considerations beyond the infrastructure. It might be fine in this hypervisor and that hypervisor, but not on the fabric that connects them. So that's my point of view. And again, experience matters. I mean, Veeam is a very flexible solution, but make no mistake, we value partners that are providing services and expertise in this area. So error prone on your own, that rhymes. We do that on Thursdays. How about you, Howard?
No, I agree. I think, again, going back to my earlier comment, ability to really understand every aspect of the customer environment while using the right tool is critical. Just because it works doesn't mean it just works. Nothing is plug and play. You got to really plan it out and really understand various facets of the technology. So this is why Benjamin is doing what he does, and this is our partner that we do all the migration with.
Let's take a quick look on the migrate to production. And so we're making good progress here. And one of the things I want to do, I want to take this job when it's done, the migrate to production. And I want to compare it, by the way, friends, to the active full backup, which I did just before the show, which is a good kind of estimate of what you might be dealing with. But let's get into the big one, Benjamin, downtime.
So can you go back to your screen there?
Yeah, sure.
Because what I do want to point out, and we'll get into this more later, even though it's showing restoring, don't let that fool you. These are able to be used right now.
Yep.
Just because it's showing restoring, you're not waiting for this restore to finish. He can go into any of these and start running. Yes, because it's showing restoring, what it's doing is at least some of that server is running straight off of the backup server. So it's going to be a little bit slower, but the server is up. So that is one of the things that we're going to get into about the minimizing downtime. Because of instant recovery and the magic it does, we are able to use Veeam's orchestration and reporting tools when we do our test. The test that we said on point number 2, that you test these migrations, that we're able to use those calculations to now what we're saying is, how long is it going to take? Because we need to find a window where we can basically have a server down for 15 minutes. Now, for examples of that, it's a VHDX of only 150 gigs. That's not that big of a deal. But how many of us have servers a lot bigger than 150 gigs? We're talking about 5 terabyte servers. And if you think about a 5 terabyte server, how long that would take for an offline conversion, that's when you start getting scared. Now, what we talk about is, it's like on our existing virtualization platform, we're a train going at 90 miles an hour down the track. And converting to a new platform is not where the train can stop. Your business still has to continue. We're now adding a 150 mile an hour train going parallel to that train, and we got to throw all the contents from one train to another. That's why we do this calculation. That's why we look at this minimized downtime. So what we'll do is we'll be using the tools that that Veeam gives us to see how long did the last incremental backup take, which of course is going to include snapshot creation and merging when it's done. How long does the instant recovery take? How long does it take to install the new integration services, Microsoft integration services? Now, for you VMware people, that's like your VMware tools, how it integrates with the hypervisor. How long does it take to then reboot the VM again? How long does it take for the VM services to come up? And what happens is, if you look at this and you go, oh man, at first glance, that 5 terabyte server is going to take me way over an hour. But what we've seen is that's only if you're doing offline. If we do all of our processing beforehand, we've seen 5 terabyte servers come up in 15 minutes. In other words, downtime of 15 minutes. We take our last backup, and we know that we're going to shut down the VM on the VMware side right then. And then we do all the other new environment to bring it up on Azure Stack HCI. And literally, sometimes we'll have 15 minutes of downtime. And the server is up with instant recovery. Again, it's slow because right at first, it's running off the backup. But as it copies more and more data over to Azure Stack HCI, it gets faster and faster. That's the magic that somebody goes, wow, we just converted from a different SAN, a different hypervisor to Azure Stack HCI and only lost like 15 minutes. That's amazing. And it is amazing. That's why we love instant recovery.
I love it too. And I just, again, I love how and here we go. 4 of them have still to remain, and the other 6 have finished. I think basically, I think these 3 are 4 are the Linux ones, and the Windows ones have finished just as we're talking here. So that's good stuff. Now, and all this time, you can see that their uptime has been going for quite a while since we've been going here. So again, real-time example. When I did this kind of in Veeam On world, it was kind of, I had some time constraints, but with the super tech bites, we have the ability to go a little bit longer, which is awesome. And then kind of one more thing on your side, Benjamin, I want to highlight, you kind of talked about some of these, but I sure like that Veeam checks all the boxes.
Yeah. So, since 2019, 2019, Veeam 9.5 came out with, or at least this is when we first started using it. We started using that feature, and it was very tiny hidden that you could take an agent backup. So you put that agent, whether it's a physical server or VM, you put that agent inside there, get a backup, shut it down, and you can do an instant, and they called it back then, instant VM recovery to Microsoft's Hyper-V at the time. And that's when we went, wow, we can start up the server while we're restoring. Now, of course, fast forward to 2024, there's 8 different types of virtualization platforms that we can do this instant VM recovery with, more coming. And now it's called just instant recovery. But if we look at this and you think about the server is not just doing a restore, it's actually started while you do the restore. And at the same time, it's doing this conversion from the previous platform to Azure Stack HCI, Microsoft's on-premises, and it's doing this conversion. So you're talking about, you have this very small downtime window, So like what we talked about, you find a time that maybe the server isn't terribly busy. And then because of that, you can test a success on near real-time data. And what I mean by that is, so if I'm doing a test migration, I take a backup of my VMware VM, and as soon as it finishes, I immediately do an instant VM recovery into the sandbox or the bubble. Because again, we can't have the same server up on production, but it allows me to see that that server has that data from like 2, 3, 4 minutes ago. So we can actually say, okay, where are times that we cannot do a migration of this VM? Is it at 6 o'clock when this thing is reading another database? Or because you have all these applications out there that we don't know how that data gets updated. So it allows you to test success at different times, different times of the day, different, do you need to do it at the end of a business day or start it at the end of a business week? And then the single downtime of a VM, we don't think about that a whole lot, but think about how important that is. When I get this VM rebooted with the integration services, with the NIC, everything the way I want it, and then I say migrate to production that Rick just demonstrated, I want that to be the last reboot I do for a while. And we can do that. So what that means is, if I do my reboot of that VM at the end of the business day on a Thursday night, when I come in on Friday morning, I don't have to do another reboot. It's running, and it's running full speed. And somebody goes, you just migrate a 5 terabyte server in 15 minutes? Well, yes and no. We put all the work in because of the Veeam tool to get most of the data there. And then the last 15 minutes was, we took just an incremental backup, and then we did all this stuff, and we started, and it was slow right at first. And overnight, it gets faster and faster till you come in the morning, it's totally moved over. So as you can imagine, that's why, we've been using this thing for 5 years, nearly 5 years. And it's like, why would we use anything else? Because it's proven. The only reason that we would hear about people doing offline backup, except for a few outliers, is 1, it was free. Okay. 2, it was a proven conversion. But think about all the downtime that offline conversions take. And you have no orchestration. You have no idea how long it's going to take. You don't have the timing. You don't have the measurements, etc. So you're guessing. And again, we want to get everything back into our control. And that's what instant recovery allows us to do. Maintain control over the whole thing. Know what to expect.
I think you also could add limited failback. The fact that the existing infrastructure is in place, We've only backed it up. We haven't manipulated it. That's another really powerful thing. So just to highlight here, what Benjamin and his company do, a lot of services driven around here. Encourage you to check this out. You all are doing this all the time, based in Tennessee. And again, the map is coming in. You must have told all your friends, Benjamin. We got so many people.
Benjamin has a lot of friends.
Yeah,
All right.
fans. So let's go over to the map one more time. We have a bunch of new additions. We've added Mexico. We've added, can't even see. That's like, I gotta think here. That's Nebraska and Kansas. We've added Mexico. I know that one. Virginia, North Carolina. We've added. Let's go over to Europe. We've added France, Netherlands, and the UK. Let's go to Africa. We've added South Africa. My friends from South Africa are watching. That's good stuff. And then we can see a little bit of we got KSA, Saudi tuning in, and Pakistan as well, and Argentina in South America watching. Awesome. Great crowd today. Thank you all for watching. For a Super Tech Bites, we don't do them long like this, but this one's really important. So Benjamin, really good perspective. Now, these 4 Linux systems are still going. These use the helper appliance. They take a little bit longer, but I am going to cheat a little bit, friends. I am going to take this migrate to production task that we did here, where I want to zoom right here into, this was a rather simple Windows system, and it was 8 minutes to do the migrate to production with 6 of them at a time. Okay, keep that in mind. Just by way of comparison, when I did the active full backup, there was an increment that was 5 minutes, and active full backup was 1437. Okay, so granted there was some bumper end time, but I don't know, Benjamin, in your experience, close to an active full, is that reasonable, excluding Linux ones with conversions? But that's what I'm seeing in my environment. All environments are different, but I thought that was kind of an interesting data point.
Yeah, for the last incremental that we would tell people to do is we would actually, to again make sure the downtime is as small as possible, we go in and we tell it, don't back up the entire job, just pick out a couple of those servers to go ahead and allow all of the what they call it, the name's slipping me, allow all of the worker tokens or whatever to be taking all the virtual hard disks off that VM. So it's focusing on that to make that incremental as small as possible. So that's why I say that generally when we're doing migrations of VMs, because the priority is as small as downtime as possible, then you're talking about those worker threads. The worker threads are going to be focused on each one grabbing a different virtual disk inside of the VM. So we go, okay, so how many can we fit with the worker threads that we have? And so that is what kind of dictates how many that we'll use for the most of the time, because then you just want those to have their snapshots, created, the backup, the merge of the snapshots, and then we can shut those down. So that's kind of how we think about things. Now, if you're talking about a test migration, yeah, we can do a lot of them, provided it doesn't take down your network. But that's the reason we do those.
And the Linux ones just finished up, friends. So they took about 19 minutes. So for those, just to kind of close the loop. Last thing I'll say is that you make, when you do those types of conversions, I want to start doing Hyper-V backups, right? Those are now on the Hyper-V host, Azure Stack HCI. Let's protect them. And so I'm just going to make a job here, and we're just going to call it example 28 Hyper-V host backup. I'm just going to take the whole thing, and that way I know that all of those are going to be included in this new backup job. Always a good idea to put this on immutable storage. Let's go with double play immutability. I have so many. I may or may not be always playing with things in my lab here, so I apologize for the noisy. There it is. Scale up backup repository, double play immutable, goes to object first and to Wasabi. I'm just going to do it every day at 10, and I want to run that as well. So let's start that. And while that backup is running, so I'm trying to walk at least through some of the things that you would see to kind of close the loop. I want to get Howard. I want to have you kind of riff, if you will. I want you to kind of educate the world about what Azure Stack HCI is and what you at DataOn do, because you literally specialize in this. So I got a couple slides here for you, Howard. Can you walk us through this?
Yeah, thank you. I think the audience here really got a flavor of really migrating from a VMware environment to a Microsoft Hyper environment is very, very straightforward. And Veeam is that partner that we, DataOn, been using for the last 10 years to help you with that process. One thing has to be very clear is that many people believe and kind of say, hey, when we back up a VMware environment, we use Veeam. At DataOn, 80+% of our customers use Veeam as the backup tool in the backup company. So Veeam plus Hyper-V Microsoft is great as well, just so you guys all know that, right? I think that's very important to note. It's not just Veeam, VMware. Veeam has spent a lot of time, effort, engineering, validation, testing to ensure that if you have an Azure Stack ACI environment running Hyper-V, Veeam is the #1 choice for your backup. I think I want to get that out really quick first. I think it's important to know that DataOn, being a company here based in California, we've been around for a long time, and we made a decision when we saw the opportunity to become an exclusive Microsoft partner focused on hybrid cloud computing. What that means is we're helping customer to go on this journey of Microsoft hybrid cloud, leveraging the technology that Microsoft built and validated in Azure, and now they're bringing down on-premises, sitting in your data center, in your server, running Azure Stack ACI as an alternative to your Veeam SAN environment, Veeam ACI environment, could be many other choices. In that process, DataOn has worked with many customers to make sure that we have a solid solution to help the customer run their application on Microsoft. And that's kind of the background on DataOn, who we are, right, as that partner.
Well, that's
If you go to, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I just think that just again doubling down on it, but I think our audience really good feedback, by the way, on the chats. But I love this view, Howard. Walk us through like what an Azure Stack HCI looks like.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to know that I've been on the road for 5 weeks, Rick. I don't go home much. And what I do is talk to customer all day. And the reoccurring theme from every customer from 5 years ago to this year is vastly different. What does that mean? Maybe the last 5 years, we have to educate the customer about Microsoft hybrid cloud journey. What is Azure Stack ACI? What is Hyper-V? Why is it comparable to a traditional SAM or VMware? But that's not true for the last 6 months. For the last 6 months, every single customer has come up to us, says, hey, we have a VMware environment. We need an alternative. We need to move now. Can you tell me more about the technology of Microsoft and how we could get there? And what does it take to get there? The entire vibe has changed, and the tsunami of customer looking at alternatives from VMware to Microsoft is happening as we speak in front of us. So that's important to know. This is in the field talking to hundreds of customers, last 5 weeks, and that is a data point I'm giving back to you as Veeam partners and Veeam customers. When we talk to customers, we always say that the journey to hybrid cloud could be very fast or very slow, depending on the organization. Majority of the customers today are still in a 3-tier SAN infrastructure. I came from that world, fiber channel, iSCSI SAN. I know it, right? It's a great solution, great platform, right? Where you have your storage, fiber channel storage, you have your compute running VMware nodes, and you have a fiber channel network. However, the transition for consolidation, performance, and everything allows you to now to have a choice moving from a traditional SAN to a hyper-converged infrastructure. where you have all your storage, network, compute, all in a server, then you cluster them together into a cluster where you could run all your compute, storage, network in the same cluster. And it's easy to expand. If you want more compute resources, you just add additional nodes. You want more storage, you can add additional drive. Allows you to really converge everything and become a hyper-converged infrastructure. What's different with Microsoft is the fact that Microsoft says, yes, we have an entire stack called Azure Stack ACI, which is hyper-converged infrastructure, which includes an OS called Azure Stack ACI OS, dedicated for Azure Stack ACI. We have a virtualization solution that's been around for 20 plus years called Hyper-V. We have an entire storage solution called Storage Spaces Direct that does dedupe, compression, everything that you know of for the SAN. And we put it all together to deliver that hyper-converged infrastructure so you can consolidate your infrastructure. But there's more, because Microsoft, we're the only company that has a cloud called Azure, right? And these solutions we're talking about, it's been proven in Azure. We've been running Azure Stack ACI storage spaces in Azure, and we're now bringing the OS on premises to enterprise customer so they can now run their data on premises with Azure Stack ACI. But the key differentiation is, because we have Azure, we built Azure Stack ACI as a hybrid cloud. Even though it sits on premises, it's integrated fully into Azure. So you could take advantage of all the Azure services, whether or not is Azure Virtual Desktop. You can run in Azure or Azure Stack ACI, AKS, container services, migration service, SQL services. You have all that capability. But at the same time, you have a single pane of glass called Azure Arc that allows you to manage, monitor, implement policies, security policies across the board. So this is a big picture of it. You have a set of solution infrastructure from DataOn. That's the top tier of Microsoft certification called integrated system. You lay down the OS, bare metal OS called Azure Stack ACI, and you could decide now you'll run virtualization, whether or not is VMs, you want Linux VM, Azure Virtual Desktop, or you could do AKS. Once all that's delivered, now you have a production workload. Your entire production workload running on this entire Azure Stack ACI cluster, and now you can run all these services on top. This is the entire Azure hybrid infrastructure that delivered by Microsoft DataOn SOS.
And Howard, that's fantastic, because I know a lot of people understand Azure, they understand Hyper-V, they understand S2D, but this full stack picture, that is actually another dimension of the conversation. So I've got more. I want to come back to you, but I'm going to jump back into the lab, and my job is underway. Oh, I was waiting for no, it's underway. I'm doing my first full backup here. So we're progressing. We've got a few of them almost done, but it should be maybe 15 or 16 minutes or so on the Hyper-V full backup. I don't know if we'll get to it on the show, but we will see. Tell me a little bit, Howard, about the portfolio. I love that kind of Azure-centric view, but what does it look like kind of from like kit on the floor?
Yeah. All you IT nerds out there, when you see hardware, you get like a candy, right? The reality is very, very straightforward. These are commodity hardware validated by Microsoft, delivered by DataOn. These are Intel white box server that DataOn actually partnered with Intel to design purposely for Azure Stack ACI. We take these server nodes, 1U, 2U, GPU enabled hybrid nodes, all flash nodes, and we build an infrastructure that's all on the Microsoft validation list. Because Microsoft built a portfolio of Azure Stack ACI as hybrid, we make sure that the infrastructure we build have choices and flexibility to ensure that when you have a robo, a manufacturing plant, a data center with all flash, or school that need a single node, all that capability can be delivered by Microsoft in the selection of infrastructure we do. More importantly, once you have infrastructure, company like partners like Benjamin could help you migrate your virtualization to this infrastructure. They can help you connect to Azure and run Azure services like AVD. The sky's the limit. But again, this journey to Microsoft and hybrid cloud is your journey, and we're here to help you with our partner to make sure that journey is very, very feasible and something that you could depend on.
That's fantastic, Howard. So I love this view of the stack. I love this experience that Benjamin brings, and I should have probably started this job earlier. First of all, it's more than 10 because there's some other ones that are there, but this full backup job should carry on. I will say this was a single host, not a full cluster, so it's not a fair comparison when it comes to that. So. Hey, Benjamin and Howard, this has been a fantastic episode of Super Tech Bites. We went long, and I knew I'd need the content, the time to cover this content. Really good engagement on the chat. So again, really appreciate both of you joining. So Benjamin, first of all, any kind of closing comments on your side?
I guess I just want to reiterate, Rick, thank you for doing this because there is a lot of uncertainty out there. And like at the last 5 conferences that Howard and I went to, I mean, of course, people are very, very concerned and they're wanting to know, do I have an option? And absolutely, yes. I mean, I don't know that Microsoft is going to be bought anytime soon. In fact, that's why we actually made the journey to find DataOn, is because we wanted to get off that, out of the rat race of you buy a SAN, you'd buy a hypervisor, it'd get bought, and then they would try to redirect you to something else. That's why in 2016, we went to the Microsoft path and said, we need to do something that we know is going to be around next year in the same way, and that we can do incremental upgrades to. And that's why we went with Microsoft. I mean, who's more stable than Microsoft at virtualization, honestly? You know, they depend on it for Azure. They depend on it for providing on premises. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem at all. And I look at Veeam's history. In 2011, we implemented the first Hyper-V support with version 6. So it's been in the market for 13 years. It's very well established as well. Howard, any closing thoughts on your side?
I want to echo Benjamin. Thank you, Rick, for putting this together. This is a great opportunity for us to share what we do on a daily basis with your audience, with your customer. Veeam is a great partner that has helped us throughout the years. Veeam supports Azure Stack ACI. The technology we're talking about is being deployed all over the world across enterprise. As you and your audience look at alternatives, definitely believe that Microsoft is ready to help you, and definitely find the right partner like Benjamin to help you with that migration process and Veeam to make sure you're successful.
Can't emphasize that enough. Benjamin and his colleagues have the experience to get through this. So again, thank you both. And a big thank you to Jeffrey, our video producer, and Felicia, our social media producer. A couple plugs. Number one, final call, Veeam 2024 online experience replay. It's going to go down or be taken off the website very, very soon. So if you haven't gone to veeam.com, go ahead and do that for some content replay. Next week, Tuesday, the Industry Insights, episode 188, the CISO Perspective Closer Look. Jeff Reichert is going to host some field CISOs and dig into that. And next week from today, 25th July, I'll be on vacation. In fact, I'm leaving here momentarily. Kirsten and JFM on my team are going to take a closer look at the latest in cloud backup with Veeam. We had both Amazon and AWS backup products updated. I want to say last week or week before. They're going to dig into that. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. That concludes our stream.